Welcome to the National Museum of the Marine Corps. My name is Scott Yost and I'm the Operations Chief here at the museum. Where we're standing right now is Leatherneck Gallery. This is the first gallery you come to when you come to the museum. It's about 20,000 square feet, covered with about a quarter acre of glass, and it has a stainless steel spire up the middle that sticks up 210 feet above the ground. This is the part you can see from Interstate 95 in Virginia between exits 150 and 152. And the name of this gallery, Leatherneck, refers to the leather collar that the Marines wore as part of their uniform during the Revolution. The first aircraft you'll see is this. It's an RQ-2 unmanned aerial vehicle. It's a remote-controlled vehicle, and it's used for observation. It's been in service in Desert Storm, and it also has been used in Iraq and Afghanistan. This particular aircraft was actually used in Iraq, and when the Iraq and Afghanistan galleries are completed, this one will be moved back there and be part of that display. Way up above us we have an FG-1 Corsair. The Corsair is an iconic aircraft that the Marines used during the Second World War. This particular one is painted up like Colonel Gregory Pappy Boeington's aircraft. He was the commanding officer of VMF 214, the Black Sheep Squadron. He was a legendary fighter ace and an exceptional pilot. But this aircraft is as I said, is a Corsair, but it was built by the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, so it's designated as FG-1 instead of an F4U. Now this blue aircraft is a later model. That's a F4U-4. That's a Korean War vintage, and during the early 1950s, all naval aircraft were painted this dark gloss blue. So that's the way we have this one painted. The difference on this one is the engine is more powerful, and it has a four-bladed propeller, which allows it to transfer that power a little bit more efficiently. The next aircraft is our AV8B Harrier II. It's a jump jet. It's a vertical/short takeoff and landing, or VSTOL aircraft. What that means is this aircraft can take off and land almost like a helicopter. It does not need an improved runway, an extensive improved runway, in order to take off and land. This is one of the original test models, one of the first ones to fly. And you can tell it's a test model because of the orange paint on the tail and on the wingtips. Now we're coming to a display of a H34 helicopter doing an air assault. This is the Operation Starlight, which the Marines landed. It was the first major operation that the Marines used to these helicopters to land behind the Viet Cong lines to basically do what we call a vertical envelopment. Operation Starlight was a combined air, ground, and naval operation, and it was in 1965. So I want to call your attention here to these mannequins, but they're not really mannequins. They're what we call cast figures. And the reason we call them that is we took a real person, usually a Marine, we covered them with plaster and rubber over about a 4-hour process to make a full body life cast. It's an unpleasant process, it's an uncomfortable process, but it's considered a kind of a great honor to be cast as one of these. And as this fellow right here said, Sergeant Espinal, he said, "One day I'll be able to bring my grandchildren here and show them what I looked like when I was 25. Our next aircraft is our JN-4 Jenny. This is a World War I aircraft. It was used as a trainer. It was built by the Curtiss Aircraft Company. Its actual designation is JN-4HG, which means it is a gunnery trainer. This aircraft, this actual aircraft, was used in Quantico as part of the training in 1919. After the First World War, there were a lot of these left over as surplus, so what people would do is they would buy them and then fly them around the country doing traveling air shows, and they called the pilots of them barnstormers because they would fly into the farms, do the show, and then leave. The next aircraft is our SBD-3 Dauntless Dive Bomber. This aircraft was a training aircraft, and it actually crashed into Lake Michigan in the 1940s during World War II. The pilot was okay. He was pulled out of the water and then finished his training and actually qualified on carrier landings the same day he wrecked this one. But this aircraft spent about 50 years on the bottom of Lake Michigan. The Navy had it recovered and they put it on display for a short time, and then they transitioned and gave it to us. We then took this aircraft and completely disassembled it, straightened out the parts that we could. The parts that we couldn't save, we manufactured from scratch to original specification using original Douglas plans to put it together. Once we had all the pieces, then we started bolting it together, putting it together rivet by rivet, and painted it up in early World War II colors. This aircraft has been on display. We put this aircraft up on display after the museum was completed, so that was quite an operation. What we have here is a tableau of Tarawa. Tarawa was an island an island chain in the South Pacific. Batia was the island. Tarawa was the name of the coral atoll that it was situated in. There were several thousand Japanese and Korean laborers on the island, and they had been reinforcing it for more than a year. They had built so many gun emplacements and pillboxes that the commanding officer, Admiral Shibasaki, supposedly had said that 1 million men could not take Tarawa in 100 years. When the Marines assaulted the island in November of 1943, they used vehicles like this. This is an amphibious tractor, or Amtrak. This was necessary for assaulting this island because it was ringed by a coral reef. This vehicle was able to swim to the reef, use the tracks to go over the reef, and then back into the lagoon and all the way up to the island. If we had not had these, the Marines would not have had the speed and the level of armor protection that these afforded, and they would have had to get out at the coral reef and then wade through about several hundred yards of chest-deep water until they got to the shore, with the Japanese shooting at them the entire time. The battle lasted 3 days, and during the course of that, 3,100 Marines were casualties, and by the time the island was taken, out of all the Japanese soldiers and the Korean laborers, only 17 Japanese soldiers survived, and 129 of the Korean laborers were captured. The commanding officer of the Marines, the 2nd Marine Regiment on Tarawa, Colonel David Shoup, famously said during one of his situation reports on the 2nd day of the battle, "Casualties many, percentage dead unknown, combat efficiency, we are winning." A very famous quote, so much so that it's one of the 12 we have ringing Leatherneck Gallery, quotes by Marines or about Marines. And while we're talking about the second deck, we have a couple of things up there that you might be interested in. One is a cafeteria-style restaurant called Devil Dog Diner. The other is a fully functional recreation of a 18th century Philadelphia tavern known as Tun Tavern. Tun Tavern is very famous and very revered by the Marines. It's the traditional first recruiting station and the birthplace of the Marine Corps in 1775. On the other side of the second deck, we have our Combat Art Gallery. It's about a 4,000 square foot gallery, and it's where we put on shows using some of the 9,000 works of art that are in the Marine Corps' Combat Art collection. Well, this concludes our tour of Leatherneck Gallery. Thank you for watching, and please come visit us sometime soon.